Good morning, Anne.
Good morning, James.
And good morning, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. Hopefully, you are all having a great weekend or a great week whenever it is that you are listening. So, as always, for the next half an hour or so, we will have a conversation. We genuinely don't know specifically what we will discuss. Fingers crossed. No, we don't. Fingers crossed you all find it interesting and enjoyable. And, well, off we go, Anne, if you're happy to begin.
I'm happy to begin, yes.
Okay. This week, if it's okay with you, I thought we could start with a couple of questions that I know have been asked to you.
Yes.
From some people who have listened to some of our podcast episodes.
Yes.
As to how the podcast came about and the wider story of why we are doing this in a broader context with a bit of backstory, if I'm honest.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
That makes sense, yes.
Okay, maybe not in every detail, but certainly
Yes.
a little flavour to begin with.
Okay.
Okay, over to you then.
Well, in the previous podcast, I have talked about my career in nursing and
Yes.
how I got to that. So I've always been within caring and interested in people. And after I had my second daughter, because if we're talking about beginning and lots of people, I don't know whether people will understand where I'm coming from, but it's the truth of my experience. And after I had my second daughter, I had to go into hospital to have an operation on the cervix. I got cervical cancer and they had to go and have part of the cervix removed. And I hemorrhaged very, very badly and after this operation and was taken back into hospital. And while the nurses were working on me, one of the patients who had been, because they couldn't get me to theatre, it was too far gone.
Yes.
One of the patients who was already still in the ward put her head round and said, "Is she dying? Is she dead?" And the nurse said to her, "We're doing our best." And I thought to myself, why is she saying that when I'm here?
Okay.
And then I realised I was looking at what was happening.
Yes.
It wasn't an internal thing, it was external. So I was actually seeing it.
An out-of-body experience.
An out-of-body experience.
Okay,
or
interesting.
some say a near-death experience.
Okay, interesting.
But that's all it was, I was watching it. And then all of a sudden, because obviously they were still working on me,
Yes.
I left the room very, very fast. It was a shh. And I was out of my body completely. And I went to nothing. And as I say, people don't have to even understand this or believe it.
Yes.
And with this out-of-body experience, it really is an out-of-body experience. You're nothing. And I went to nothing, no thing.
No thing.
That's all I can explain to anybody. There's no explanation except that it was no thing.
I know what you mean.
Yes. And while I was in this no thing,
Yes.
it was perfect peace.
Yes.
I can't describe to anybody the utopia. I don't know. It's peace, absolute peace. Now, I've got two tiny children, one newborn and one 2.
So how old were you at this time?
23.
23.
So I'm this young woman with 2 beautiful children who I have left behind.
So you are in the hospital, as far as they're concerned, unconscious.
Unconscious, yes.
Bleeding out.
Yes.
And you are having an out-of-body experience, as best you can describe.
As best I can describe it.
And you have left the room.
Yes.
And as best words can describe, travelled to a place of perfect peace.
Of nothing.
Of no thing whatsoever.
No thing whatsoever.
Beyond description.
You can't describe it. There's no way I can describe
Well, you're
it.
doing a good job.
Then what happened was...
Yes.
All I can say is a voice. I don't know whether it was a voice. I don't know whether it was a vibration.
A voice.
I'm in nothings.
A voiceless voice.
A voiceless voice
Yes.
said to me, "Do you want to go back?"
Yes.
And I said, "No. No, remember I've got 2 tiny children.
Yes.
Who I dearly love. No, that's how perfect it was. No.
Yes.
So then the next question, I had 3 questions.
Yes.
The next question was, what about your children? And I still find this difficult and hard when I say this. And I said, I still don't want to go back. The third question was, what about my children? I came back immediately because what I learnt in that time was that all children matter, not just my own too.
Yes.
And that was the start of my journey, was that all children matter.
Would it be fair to say you understood?
Absolutely. I understood it, and I was told...
That the statement, the instruction, the invitation of my children
Yes.
is inclusive of every child.
Absolutely,
Yes.
100%.
Yes.
Every single child.
Absolutely, yes.
And I've never felt, from that moment, I've never felt any different. My children haven't been more important than any other children. And I think some people find that hard, but they are as important as all children as well.
Absolutely. No one is more special than anybody else.
No.
In that way.
Yes.
Everybody is equally magnificent.
Yes.
And can be equally foolish in equal measure.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And my children could be a little so-and-so
I was
like
going to
everybody
say,
else's.
in the case of babies and toddlers, quite often at the same time, equally foolish and equally divine and magnificent.
Yes, but don't get
and
me on
wonderful.
teenagers.
That's a slightly different description, isn't it?
So yes, I was given, which I'm not going to go into, I was given other information as well at that time.
Yes.
Which comes out, it wasn't all there at one time, it comes out in different times of my life. So this is what I'm saying is, that brought me to the moment we are now. I'm not going to go in details of everything before, and many things have happened.
We can discuss it in further detail.
In further detail, yes.
Yes, in future podcasts.
But it brings me to our events that we do now.
Okay.
And workshops, because we haven't talked about any of this, and I think people are curious.
As to what we're doing as a community group and why we're doing it.
Yes.
Yes.
And that's my reason and my beginning. So that's evolved over 40 years.
Well, it's evolved over your lifetime, really, hasn't it?
It has, yes. So, well, not all my lifetime, I'm older than that. But yes. So I think it would be nice, because we haven't said anything about the events or the workshops we do. And I think, and that then can lead to the other reasons why we do it in this day and age. But I'd rather you speak about the workshops and events than me, if you can just explain too.
Yes, thank you, Anne.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing your experiences, deeply personal.
Yes, it is deeply personal.
And honestly, from my perspective, and I'm sure everybody listening, with a deep sense of gratitude and reverence for what you've talked about. And I'm sure in different ways, people will have an empathy and an understanding in different ways as to what you're talking about and why you're sharing it. And I have I have an indescribable amount of respect for you.
Thank you.
And reverence for what you're sharing and why you're sharing it, and your bravery and courage. So thank you very, very much.
Okay.
We, as part of a community group, a community interest company, in terms of a CIC, a registered CIC, Stride for Truth, facilitate, organise, participate in numerous community gatherings, community parties, community walks, family-orientated, sports-orientated, music, dance, social, workshops, absolutely, quizzes, and many other things as well, centred around bringing people together in the goodness of humanity to facilitate and to foster a sense of unity so that we can share each other's company, but also set an example to all generations as we bring all generations together, and in hope and in optimism be an example to the world, in as much as that community exists and that humanity is at its strongest together in cooperative, communicative spirit. And whatever guise that takes, there is value in it. There's value in shared human experience, deeply profound human experience, whether it is over a game of dominoes or in deep philosophical and existential talk within discussions at workshops, or chasing a ball at FunFit, or eating a delicious burger or hot dog at a barbecue. Whatever it might be, there is value in shared human experience, and our shared presence together with anybody, all of you listening, even this podcast, in a sense, in a guise, is part of that tapestry, is part of that network of shared experience. And our shared experience is our human story. And we are all a part of that human story, and we're all sharing that human story. And there is value, meaning, profound meaning beyond description in our human story. And we facilitate these events, and on a basic level, they are very much family orientated, and we have a few events coming up. Just to give you an example, so we have a workshop coming up on the 2nd of February, which is a Sunday, and that is an afternoon workshop. And that will be an opportunity for stillness and some quiet in a very chaotic, noisy world, and an opportunity to explore in an introductory sense about healing and self-healing and the concept, the idea and the energetic frequency of it. And I know that sounds rather new age and esoteric. It isn't so much that, but it certainly is inclusive of any idea, really. It's open-minded, and an opportunity to explore personal space and stillness and how we can bring healing to ourselves and facilitate and share that healing with each other. And that can be in any guise, whether that's mental, physical, emotional. For the sake of clarity, there is no promise of outcome whatsoever to do with this workshop. There is no promise of any outcome at all in terms of an objective or a definitive promise or outcome. It's not about that. It's not cure, it's healing. There's a difference between cure and healing. This is people connecting to themselves and connecting to each other and connecting to the voiceless voice that you touched upon before.
Definitely.
And the infinite capacity for change that provides. So there is no promise of outcome whatsoever. Nobody is promising anything.
No.
But it will be, in all earnestness and endeavour, to be interesting, engaging, thought-provoking, meaningful, welcoming, enjoyable.
Food.
Delicious food and refreshments. Peaceful, genuinely good people. And it will serve you well, and you are all welcome to be of an open mind and of an open heart. It will be genuinely a wonderful opportunity for people to come together, to be together, and to learn together and share our stories and our presence together. I am hopefully, I always find it a little bit awkward to talk about and enthuse about what we're doing, not because in any way, shape or form it is disingenuous. I suppose that's why you passed it to me.
Yes.
Because
I can't see that.
Yes. There is no desire here of betterment or more importance, none whatsoever, nor is it deliberately esoteric or spiritual or anything like that. But it certainly isn't negating any of that either. It's as ordinary and as profound as the two concepts can possibly be, perfectly together, by people being themselves.
Yes.
I hope and trust that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense.
We also have monthly, if I get my words out, monthly public evenings in which questions, subjects similar to what we have discussed in our podcast, Anne, can be talked about, both in groups, and you or I could discuss and answer some questions to a live audience. And the next one of those is on Tuesday, the 4th of February in Manchester. Any details to do with any of this you will find on our social media platforms, which is Stride for Truth on Facebook and Instagram. And we also have a website, stridefortruth.com. And there is a contact us on our website, and you will be able to, if you'd like to share any feedback, send any questions, any insight, anything really, you're very welcome to share that. That would be wonderful, and we'd love to hear from you all. And also you can leave a comment under the podcasts on the social media platforms, and any number of us will endeavour to get back to you as soon as possible. So if you're interested in coming to a public evening with like-minded, open-minded people to discuss interesting topics, to hear interesting answers, to facilitate a sense of change, of positive, meaningful change, impactful potential change in our world for the betterment of humanity, sincerely, genuinely put. The next one of those is on the 4th of February in Manchester. The details of the specific address and times and everything you will find on the social media platforms.
Yes.
And please ask any questions. We also have a stand in Altrincham on the 15th of February. Now, this is where anybody, you all listening, are absolutely welcome to come and stand together for peace and unity across our earth. There's so much discord in our world, so much toxicity of idea, of relationship, of culture, of people, that the divisiveness in this world is tearing everybody apart. Now, this is not about a dogmatic belief, a system of belief. This is about humanity having the opportunity to stand side by side, despite our differences, recognising there is infinitely more that unites us, and we share one planet as one human family, and that we do not need to subscribe to the same belief systems. We can still stand side by side with each other for the greatest peace of all humanity, for every single child on our planet. As idealistic and as naive and as whimsical as that may sound, it is the highest reason that I could possibly conjure in words, that we are standing, that every single child on our earth, all of your children, all of your grandchildren, and that of every other child, grandchild on this earth.
That's not just peace in war, is it? That's peace on the streets.
Absolutely, yes.
Talking about
peace of mind, peace within families, peace within the workspace, peace in terms of the end of the corruption of gangs and control of cartels of various guises, corruption in established institutions.
And even within our street gangs.
Absolutely, that's what I'm referring to in lots of ways. Absolutely, yes. So it's very difficult to put in a particular sentence, and peace and love often sounds either retro in terms of a hippie movement, that it lacks punch and power, naive or new age, all of these things it includes, but it's not that, not specifically that. It's the most powerful, the most meaningful, and the most necessary message there is for every single child on our earth. Now, that they are not living under violence and tyranny, control and lies, abuse of guys, in terms of all guises, mental, physical, emotional, sexual. That's what I mean in terms of guys, all guises. That every single child can rest their head this evening knowing that they are safe. A world can come where every single child is safe if we all stand together, unified, in spite of our differences of colour, of creed, of faith, of nationality, of worldview, of political persuasion, when we are able to see that that which unites us is infinitely more powerful than anything that can divide us, even though we are unable and inadequate in description in words to define and definitively say what it is that unites us, but we can feel it, that we are a human family. And we are obviously different in a multiplicity of ways, in a plethora of different ways we are different, and often at odds with each other, passionately, meaningfully, necessarily. And that's for the interest of life to move and shake, and for things to be created and experienced. But we must never forget we are one human family, and it has been forgotten on this earth, and it has led to evil and wickedness. The lies have taken over, and the truth is not a word, a being. And I stand with you, and I invite everyone, all of us, to potentially stand together, not in belief, but in the spirit of humanity And we can, if you choose to call it something more than that. The name does not matter. Simple humanity is as profound as necessary. Apologies, Anne. I've gone on a bit of a preach and a rant there, and I hope you've stayed with me. But
No,
I am passionate about it, and I won't apologise for what I've said. I will apologise maybe for hogging the microphone for quite a long time
it's
there.
fine.
So over to you. Please share
Over to me.
how you feel.
I look at it like with I'm as passionate as you are, because my heart aches. It aches when I look at the news and I look at what's happening with children who are harming other children, stabbings. What's going on in this world,
Yes.
to me, is awful. But what I'd like people to think about is that I don't think there's anybody, unless they're, and I'm sorry for saying this, but I definitely mean it, that has a warped enough mind to look at a baby in a pram, a newborn baby,
Yes.
that's smiling its first smile, that doesn't melt, that we see that soul that's come onto this earth, that's perfect,
Absolutely, yes.
because nobody has influenced it
No.
at all. So its little smile, and if it wants to cry, it cries. And sometimes, and I'm saying this about myself, not anybody else, please don't that. My daughters one of them I wanted to throw out of the window at times because she cried all the time.
Okay. Right.
So I'm not being, I do know what I'm saying here, but you can't
Yes.
look at a new baby and without melting and without thinking, what is this little soul going to become?
Absolutely,
But that
yes.
little soul only becomes what it becomes by experience, because it has nothing in its little head when it's born.
No.
But the world experiences it. It's here for its own soul journey, but then people influence it, and other people, and today we've got so many things that influence our children, even outside ourselves. So I would like people to remember that, when we're getting annoyed, and it's not always easy, when we're getting annoyed with our own children, to just remember what they look like when you first held them in your arms.
Yes.
And I think that's important, because we do forget.
Yes.
We forget how influenced even as adults we can be. People influence us. So we have to start standing in our own feet with our own beliefs of what we want this world to be.
Absolutely. And goodness must have a voice.
It must, yes, I agree with you.
And goodness must fight back.
Yes, definitely.
It must fight back. I'm not talking about violence or control or tyranny in any way, shape or form. But I'm talking about unity, strength, passion, a sense of togetherness, a sense of mission in that sense, genuine goodness.
It's important.
For children, with children, uniting all generations to keep the buoyancy of soul. Hope is so important. Faith is immovable.
Yes.
These are not bygone concepts, part of dogmatic religious constructs. These are the best we can cultivate in language to describe the indescribable relationship that we hold.
So would you say it's by example, by our example, that we should lead our children, not by our own examples as parents, as people?
We all have the opportunity to lead by example. And as much of a platitude as it can become, because it's often repeated in various guises, it is true. We all can be an example to the world.
Yes.
One thing that I feel helps is that it's not the quest of being perfect in that guise, in any of the mind's concepts of what perfect would be, which is probably closely assimilated to what AI potentially would be, which is speed of thought, processing power without error, able to quantify unlimited potential data and conclude an answer that is correct all of the time. This is not the concept of perfection to the soul. The soul...
That's without feeling.
The soul, as far as language, I suggest for this morning,
Yes.
as a concept that could be and hopefully is useful to all of us, and you all listening, I trust that it is, hopefully, is that the soul understands perfectly flawed, meaning any shortcomings, perceived shortcomings that we all have within our life experience on earth is part of this tapestry that creates a strength for somebody else and is also strengthening us in another way, that we are part of a symphony, a song, and we are all coming together to create the most beautiful, the most spectacular, the most divine, the most moving, the most rousing of melodies, and that it's not about perfection in terms of error-free. Soul and perfect within the soul is to bring love and feeling to every possible experience, even the most difficult situations, as inconceivable as that may be. If we can bring love and feeling, and essentially to bring and make every choice with our hearts in terms of a feeling, not to ignore intuition, not to ignore data analysis, and not to ignore logic, to incorporate them with intuition and emotion, and to have a balanced, in terms of what common sense in the most holistic sense can be, is the perfect balance, or at least the interplay and relationship and dance between intuition and logic. And it's logical to apply intuition, and it's intuitive to listen to logic. And the two beautifully move together and dance around each other and foster ideas that can grow, and plans that can be implemented, and solutions and remedies that work. And that's human potential, human dynamism, human capability. And in a world that's ever becoming more and more machine, goodness can stand again, metaphorically speaking, and literally at times we can stand together.
I was talking to one of my clients today.
Yes.
In general, we were talking, and we were talking about intellect.
Okay.
Intellect. And then we were talking about wisdom.
Yes.
And I was saying that by choice, I would choose wisdom over intellect.
Okay.
Which is interesting, isn't it? And in the end, the person who I was talking to, he also was agreeing, because no matter how intelligent you are, unless you have got wisdom, you can't even use your intelligence.
Absolutely. Well, maybe.
And that's where we're at, I think, in this time.
Absolutely interesting. Maybe a possible loose description, certainly not a definitive description, a loose description of wisdom is the ability to apply effectively the knowledge we have.
Yes.
So we could accumulate a vast amount of knowledge, but if we are inadequate and unable to apply it, we lack wisdom for a positive potential outcome. And I know that's subjective, but we can all agree generally which way that points. Maybe for another podcast.
Yeah. And then you can get into another one. Is knowledge intellect? So that's for another time.
Another time, yes, absolutely.
It's
very
a conundrum,
interesting,
isn't it? It's a conundrum, really. We can turn many things around in this life.
Absolutely.
The greater good or for the most horrendous.
Absolutely. Yes, to be used or to be abused. So
then that's where intellect, knowledge and common sense come into it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Again, semantics, words, subjective, fascinating, absolutely fascinating and valuable. And we can explore those, if I get my grammar correct, those in the podcast to come. Yes. Well, I think we'll have to leave it there, Anne.
Okay, it's gone quickly.
It has gone quickly. Thank you for sharing what you did before, Anne.
Okay, pleasure.
I feel very privileged and very honoured to hear you say that in my presence, to be honest with you. And I'm sure everybody listening feels that too. A very passionate second half from myself, and I hope I haven't talked you all into boredom or you've turned off. So please forgive me hogging the microphone, and thank you for listening.
Thank you. Bye.
And we look forward to being with you next week, to speaking with you all next week. Have a lovely weekend and goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.